thing that's true for all moms, we have a lot of stories to tell. Some are silly, some are gross, some bring us to tears. With each story that's shared, another mom feels a little less alone. So join us as we laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the I'm Mom Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the I'm Mom Podcast. I'm Abby, I'm Mom's content manager, and once again, I'm joined by Susan, Megan, and Chloe. This week's story comes from Megan, and it's called When Extracurriculars Are Extra.
So just to kind of ease into the conversation, when we were growing up, I'm one of 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5. My parents kind of gave us these guidelines of, okay, you're going to play one sport and you're going to do one activity within the arts field, whether that's playing an instrument, taking an art class, singing, acting, whatever it might be. So we get to pick one in each category that we wanted to do. And so I made my choice. I decided to swim, and then I was going to take piano lessons. But one of the things that I really was interesting as I got older was I realized I didn't want to do anything in the arts field. I just realized I'm not gifted in the arts field, and I'm just not super artistic, and piano was just a stretch for me and not something I enjoyed. However, I continued to swim throughout my life, all the way through high school, and really enjoyed it. It was great exercise and a great social outlet. I think I really chose swimming mainly because all of my friends were doing it. I wasn't a stellar swimmer, but it was just a great way to fill my time and keep me busy. But one of the things we were talking about was, you know, there's so many different activities that kids have these days, and there's so much going on. And, you know, how do you decide? Are you allowed to quit when you want to quit? Especially as a kid, I was constantly changing my mind. I was like, well, maybe I should play tennis. Maybe I should do something else. And my parents had us, you know, commit to the season. If it was a sport, we had to finish it and see it through. Or if it was in the arts, you know, we had to finish out our lessons or whatever we committed to. So we knew in the back of our head, it was a commitment, and we weren't just going to be able to change our minds willy-nilly. So it taught us that commitment, but it also allowed us to explore different things in different areas.
So I have a follow-up question to you guys having to do a sport and something in the arts. With 5 kids, Susan, how did you manage 10 different activities?
Jeez. So when Megan, Emily, and Marky were younger, I didn't adopt Hannah and Grant until they were like 9 and 13. So Emily and Marky were 9 and 13 also. So early years wasn't a problem. I didn't have a problem because most of the art things were just once a week lesson. It wasn't very involved. And I did allow, once we saw what they naturally gravitated to, for them to opt out. Like you heard Megan say, it was clear by the time she hit like 3rd or 4th grade that she wasn't really enjoying this. It wasn't a passion for her. She wasn't good at it. Emily, her sister, did the opposite. She was a great swimmer, but she loved piano, loved dance, and ended leaving swimming. She didn't do that in high school. But what I was looking for is, okay, by the time you get to 12, 13, 14, approaching high school, what can you be a part of at the high school level? Just be a part. I feel like our high schools are very large, and you need to go in knowing I'm going to join a club or I'm going to join a sport or I'm going to join a chorus or somewhere where you could find your people. And so that was my end goal in exploring things when they were little. I didn't let them do 2 sports. My son opted out of art rather earlier even than Megan. And I did at times allow him to do 2 sports if they didn't coincide in the same season. So he could rotate because he always wanted to be doing something. So that was kind of the goal. It really wasn't that bad. No. Now, once we went to 5, the beauty of that was Megan had started driving almost.
Nice.
So it was still a little bit of a juggle, but you do what you have to do.
Chloe, what did you do growing up?
I played soccer.
When did you start? How old were you?
I must have been 4 or 5 when I started playing soccer, and then I played all through college. And then I did gymnastics, cheerleading, dance, that whole thing, which I loved. Like, I really, really liked gymnastics and cheerleading. I didn't care for dance as much, but And I like played basketball, which I was terrible at. I'm 5'4" and just not coordinated with the hands, which is why I stuck to soccer. But I think I dabbled in a lot of different athletics, but soccer and gymnastics / cheerleading were the things that I stuck with until high school.
We lived, and I still do actually live, where my neighborhood backs up to a little league. So it was so easy. There was actually a hole in the fence behind my parents' house. And so we could just walk right over to the field. So it was super convenient for my sister and me to play. She was good. She's 3 years older than me. She was good. I played t-ball, and the story goes that I stood in right field and sucked my thumb anytime we were out playing defense. It just was not my thing. Yeah. And so fortunately, I think I played for a year, maybe 2, and then my parents didn't force me to do it again. But it was definitely a thing. Like, my sister was always into sports. She played volleyball, basketball, softball, and it just wasn't I'm just not athletic. I cheered, and even that, like, I got most improved one year, which
that's good.
That award means you were bad and now you're less bad. So that was the one that I got. But I think it was different back 25, 30 years ago compared to now. I feel like there's so much, talking about extracurriculars or extra, there's so much pressure now on the kids, but it's also on the parents to start your kids early, or else they're not going to be able to play at the level that is even, I feel like since neither of my boys play a sport right now, if they did decide they wanted to play something when they got into high school, they're not going to
They're behind. It's really by 10.
It's so competitive now.
Right. Wow. Right.
And I think, where there's demand, people get creative. And that was club ball and all these club sports started, because when I was growing up, there were no club sports. You played when the season was in and you stopped.
Wow, yeah.
And now it's year round, and club is expensive. And so it is somewhat extra.
Yeah. It's extra time. I think that's the boys. My sons had some friends over a couple weeks ago, twins. So they're brothers, obviously twins, they're brothers. And the mom was like, well, we can only do Tuesday nights because Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday mornings, we have either soccer or baseball. One boy plays soccer, one boy plays baseball. She said Tuesday nights are the only night that we don't have something. Wow. And I feel like a horrible mom because I'm like, I don't want to spend all of my time in a lawn chair or a bleacher on the side of a field. And maybe if I saw my kids thriving and really enjoying themselves, my mindset would change, because that's just not what they do. And so I'm not in that position. But I admire these moms that are willing to sacrifice so much.
Yeah, I will say it's interesting because that was my mom. Like, I traveled an hour for the club that I played in.
Wow.
And I did that 3 times a week. I played school soccer, so I did that every day.
And then were your games far away too for the club games?
So I lived about 2.5 hours away from where we played our games every single weekend. We traveled down to Miami every weekend on Sundays, and we played 2 games. And that was insane. But I would carpool with 3 of my girlfriends. But it's funny what you're saying because my mom is still really close with the girls' moms that I played with. And they still call themselves the soccer moms. And they're still really close. So, and I know that's probably not the experience for every mom, but I know she found a community within
I get that
sport.
I get that. If it meant sitting with my girlfriends for 2 hours on a Saturday morning, I'd do it.
It can be really fun. I experienced that with my kids. You make these friends for a season.
Yeah.
And it is really fun. Now, I want to give a shout out to single moms. It's too hard. It's so hard. If you're trying to I was fortunate in that if I had to, go on a road trip with the chorus or something with Emily, he was at home making sure the other kids got to practices or something else. So it just depends. Swimming for my kids when they were little, we all went to the pool. They all did it. We ate at the snack bar every night with all the other kids and moms. And it was, yay, it's spring, summer's coming, and we're just going to be at the pool all for the next 3 months.
That's definitely something in my family since we are in 2 different houses. And my son's dad lives, it's 40 minutes away because he's in a pretty rural part of town. And so it's just in the back of our heads all the time. Like, okay, if they want to play baseball, where do they play? Where it's not, a 40-minute drive for one of us. Yeah. And so like, I know there's probably a lot of single moms or families that co-parent where they kind of hold this burden or this guilt, maybe even of, because of our situation, they don't have the same, it's just not as easy. Like you said, it's not as simple as, okay, dividing and conquering. And the other thing, when one of the kids doesn't play, like that's the other thing, is if one kid is not athletic and doesn't play that sport, do they just get dragged around to wherever the other kid?
If I could tell you, I can't tell you how many afternoons I spent on the playground at the pool because my toddler was always trying to jump in the pool while the others were practicing. Yes, they do get dragged around. However, they have their season. Their season is coming, and they often get to play with other kids that are also hanging out. And whether you're at the football field or the swimming pool, there's always fun. It's like they're just playing outside. It's just fun. I would bring stuff for some. The girls would get a little bit more bored than the boys, but my sons would always find something to do because they're outside.
I want to talk a little bit about like the extra benefits of doing these kinds of activities. Megan, before we started recording, you were talking about your role as the esteemed captain of the swim team.
The honorary captain.
I mean, like, what do you think about that? Like you said, you weren't necessarily the best one on the team.
Yeah, well, it's funny just because I was definitely not the best swimmer on the team. Like I said, it was more of a social outlet for me than it was. I'm the least competitive person on the planet, but I did it for exercise and I did it to be around my friends. And so I was shocked my senior year when I was one of the 4 captains chosen because I had multiple other friends that were a much better swimmer than I was. And I was so shocked that I even asked my coach after. I said, how am I a captain? Like, why did you make me a captain? And he was like, well, we have 3 other really, really talented swimmers that, have proven to be leaders, but they're all really intense. And I want this to be an enjoyable experience for the whole team. And I went to a really large public high school. And so the team was huge. And so I was kind of the designated spirit captain.
But I think you got that also because he observed that in you. I think Megan is very much a nurturer. She ended up being the swim coach to the team that she did when she was younger, when he asked her to be a helper coach. Again, she wasn't the best swimmer, but she was good with the kids. And so when she got to high school, then she was always helping the freshmen, telling them what to do. And he saw that. She was a good leader. And that's where you can really fit in. You don't have to be the star. You can still be a contributor.
A really funny anecdote is a lot of people wanted to be in my lane because it was like the slow lane. I didn't feel this pressure to have to work really hard.
So don't you think that with the way that sports have become ultra competitive, kind of what I was saying, where if your kid doesn't start playing baseball by the time he's 10, he's probably not going to make the high school team unless he's a savant, Does it take some of that aspect away? Like, is there the kid that's not great, but got the great spirit?
So I think if you're a mom out there and your kids are going to be going to a certain high school, I would scope it out. Go to the events because there are coaches who are there, like her swim coach, to make it a big team and include as many people as possible. I mean, pretty much, Megan, almost everybody made the team, right? I mean, they didn't cut very many people in swimming because it was huge. It was huge. And then there's teams like at her high school that are winning national championships, and it's really hard to get on. There are clubs, and for example, chorus at their school was huge, 250 kids.
Wow.
And he rotated them in different levels, and he took everyone. It was a class they went to, and so they found their group there. There are certain activities, extracurricular activities in schools where you have a very inclusive, I just want this to be a great experience, or I want it to be really competitive. And if you go scope that out, you can kind of gear your child for that when they're going to high school. Like, hey, let's go watch the, our chorus puts on events like 4 times a year. Let's go to the high school and get tickets for that event and watch. Maybe your child will catch a vision. Like, I want to do that when I get into high school.
So how do you know because my older son is the one who wants to try everything, and he's not athletic at all. I mean, he can hardly walk without tripping. Like he's not coordinated. The little one is very coordinated, but is also a homebody and likes to just, so like, how do you know when to say yes to their request to do something? Because Liam said, I want to play soccer. I was like, oh, that's not going to end well. It's just because all of his friends play.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you not, could see it being a struggle for him. I could see it being even embarrassing for him, or him getting there and being like, never mind, I don't want to do it.
I think you still need to let him try it. He's going to keep hearing about the friends. And until he tries it and realizes, I don't really like this, he's going to think he missed out. Now, on the other hand, exposing him to, now there's like robotics groups, it's super and competitive and other things like that where he can find his thing. The reality is kids want to have that thing they can talk about with their friends outside of school, whether it's church or, whatever. They have their outside stuff. So if all his friends are doing soccer and you don't ever let him try it, then he may always wish that he did soccer and wonder. Yeah. Versus trying it and it being like, oh, I don't like this.
So that raises the question. We have a great article about this on iMom about what to do if your kid is not good at something. Do you tell them, or do you just let them go and let them play until they decide they want to quit? Or maybe not even a sport. Maybe like the example in this article is that this friend of mine, her son is not a great singer, but he sings at the top of his lungs. He doesn't always get the right answer, but she says he always raises his hand in class to participate. And I said, he's got confidence. Like, don't ever squash that. And so I feel like there's benefits to allowing your child to do something that they're not good at, because there's just so many other aspects that are building up within them by not being the star on the team, not being the smartest kid in the class or whatever it is,
In Megan's case with swimming, I let her go on even though she wasn't that great. She'd get discouraged from time to time, but it was her friends and it was a good social group. And I could see this is going to go through high school. I know what the team's like. And so it was just a really good fit for her. I think if your child is enjoying it and they have friends and they don't mind sitting the bench, as long as they have a realistic view that maybe there's going to come a season where they don't make the team. But if they're enjoying it, it should be fun at a young age. Yeah. It should just be fun. And so it's okay to continue. Now, Chloe wanted to drop out of soccer. Tell that story.
Which time?
And you were good.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there were so many times I wanted to quit, just for various reasons. And my parents never let me quit. And I'm so glad they didn't. Because I don't know if it was their wisdom of knowing I didn't have a legitimate reason to quit. I was just, tired of it, or like, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't let me quit.
Did they not let you quit in the middle of a season, or once a season was over, they kept encouraging you to sign back up? I think there's a difference between the two.
I don't know if I ever had a moment where it was like the middle of the season and I'm like, I just want to quit. That's not a very like me thing to do.
Was it because they saw it as an opportunity for you? Because there is a valid reason to continue if you could get a scholarship and your parents need you to get a scholarship.
Yeah, well, I think, so I didn't ever really want to quit until high school. And I didn't really even consider soccer in college as a possibility until my sophomore year of high school, and usually get recruited your junior year. And I was verbally committed really early. So that was like that was a huge blessing. Like that was, and honestly, that was like,
then you had to stick with it.
Yeah. And also like, it was a really cool situation. It was a school I really wanted to go to. And like, it was a total God thing because, it just honestly all worked out pretty easily. But then in college, I wanted to quit several times, and I had 5 coaches in my 4 years of college. I went to 2 different schools. I had a lot of coaches get fired. I had some really interesting situations with coaches, just really a lot of mental, emotional, just battles that were going on with soccer. However, I'm just so glad I didn't quit. And a big reason why is because I have some of my closest friends in my life through soccer and my college team. And I'm just very, very glad my parents made me stick it out, because those relationships are they're going to go beyond anything that I could have done in those 17 years.
So in this case, your situation was your extracurricular was extra difficult.
It was extra.
But you learned.
It was extra difficult, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot of character development, relational development. I mean, just so much of who I am, I believe, was formed in those years and through soccer.
I think that extra drama is what often comes from doing extracurriculars, whether it's dealing with a coach you don't get along with and having to learn through that and learn that confrontation and how to have those conversations maybe, or drama with a teammate or somebody, if it's not a team, someone that's in the play with you, kind of like what we were talking about with your other daughter, Susan. So I guess it's just another reason why extracurriculars are so important. It's funny because this weighs on me a lot because my kids don't do a lot yet. And so I'm always thinking they do scouts. So all they do is Boy Scouts at this point, and they do that with their dad. And I'm like, gosh, what? I guess my question would be for parents who don't have their kids in an extracurricular activity, what is everything going to be okay?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for saying that.
No. Because there came a point where my adopted daughter did not have extracurriculars. Her gift was academics, and she nailed it. And I could say that because she didn't get her brain from me, but she became a nuclear engineer. And it was, when she went, it was socially distracting for her to do extracurriculars. And so it was just better for her to study, and she loved that. So
when I think back about when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I think maybe I played t-ball at that time, but otherwise everybody wasn't playing a sport. We did brownies, Girl Scouts or whatever. But now I just think there's so much extra pressure on parents to get their kids in all the things, get them playing piano now, get them playing soccer now, get them doing whatever it is now so that they can build that foundation, especially all the things you hear about. Oh, if your kid starts gymnastics when she's little, she won't have any fear and she'll be able to do all these things because she's little and she flips and she's flexible. I think the more knowledge that we have now, knowing what we know is almost it's a detriment to us.
Because it's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming. It really is.
Yeah.
So we talked about quitting, Chloe, when you wanted to quit and not letting your kid quit. When is an appropriate time to let your child either let them quit or pull them out yourself? What do you think, Susan?
I've only had one time that happened. My son was playing club baseball, and he had a coach who did not line up in our how we treat people. It was a really bad example, we felt, for our son. And it wasn't just cussing at the kids. He was super demeaning, and even with his own son, it was painful for me to watch the game because of how just verbally abusive he was to the kids. And we pulled him that season. We didn't continue.
So if it's a situation, an interpersonal situation between either the coach and the child or the child and another child where you can tell that more harm is being done than good, is that what you'd say?
Well, I think, you have to know what you believe is acceptable for your child to sit under. And so many times our kids have had coaches that we didn't necessarily love or whatever, but they had to ride that out. You got to learn you're going to have bosses in the future that you don't love. And so you've got to learn to get along. But in this case, the public disgrace on the mound, and then all the kids would just freeze, and you could see that they were totally being motivated by fear that this coach was going to publicly just lash them. And these are 10-year-olds. And so to me, it was abusive and disrespectful. And we felt we didn't want our son thinking that was okay. And so if you don't think what your coach is doing is, for us, biblically okay in loving others well, then it's okay to look at your child and say, you know what? This is not how we treat people. And we are afraid he's going to treat you that way. He's treating his own son that way. And we're taking you out because you deserve more than to be abused like that. There's a line, there's a line. And I will say some of those high school coaches get a little.
Well, living now where living near a football and baseball fields, we can hear these coaches, and sometimes we hear them giving the greatest pep talks where you're like, yes, thank you. That's so great. And other times it's like, you need another outlet for this anger and this living vicariously through these little kids, And
I think there's an age too, when my son was in college, in high school, I felt like he'd come home and talk about it, but understand it and, vent to us and us think about it. But when they're 10, when they're young like that, no, they can't really, it's too young.
Yeah. What are some ways like you can check in on your kids and make sure things are going good? Because I'm even thinking about times when I've been on teams where maybe one of the other girls was a bully or there was just other little things micro things going on that weren't visible to our parents. So what are some ways we can like check in on our kids?
I go to practices. I went to practices.
Yeah.
I rotated through practices.
Yeah.
I would go early, pick up. I would, drop off and try to watch a few minutes, go early, pick up early. I would say to my husband, okay, I haven't been all week. Can you go?
Yeah.
And we would just kind of make the rounds. But we liked it too, because that's how you meet the moms.
Yeah.
I also volunteered a lot for the teams, because then you meet the other parents, you hear about the kids, and they'll start confiding in you, the other moms, like, did the coach tell you this?
Yeah.
Or did you see what that boy was doing to that other boy? And you kind of hear the scoop.
Yeah. I think if you can't go, because, a lot of moms are working late into the day or, whatever reason, I think you find that mom that is always at all the things and you befriend her and say, hey, give me the scoop. Like, that's what I would do, probably.
That's good.
Yes. You go out, like, in the weekends, if they have a game and everybody goes to pizza after, you go.
Yeah, that's
you
good.
go. And you sit there and you listen to the kids.
One interesting thing that I kind of feel like we haven't touched on either, and maybe this is because none of us are like, well, Chloe, you're competitive. I mean, you played competitive soccer, but I was not a super competitive person. I didn't feel like I had super competitive parents, but I feel like one of the things I've witnessed through friends and other family is the kids that feel such pressure to play and perform and play well because their parents expect that of them and they aren't really enjoying it, but they feel like they will disappoint their parents or let them down if they say they don't want to do it anymore. Or, I witnessed that and I felt so bad.
It's typically the child that's crying when they're young.
Oh,
yeah. Well, or just like complete, very intense or, because they feel like they had to live up to their parents' expectations.
Or an older sibling, the path that's been laid by that older sibling.
So this is the case of when the parents extra?
Yes. Yeah. I see it all the time. I feel like the moms that grew up dancing, and it comes from an innocent place. Before I had boys, I was like, oh, I cheered. My daughters are going to cheer.
Yeah.
And now I have boys and I guess they could cheer if they want to. But you just have this vision, I think, as a parent of what your kids are going to do and what they're going to be. And for a little while, you can steer them in that direction because they're little. But then it gets to a point where they start to have their own opinion and you got to step back and let them be them. But I don't think every parent is self-aware enough. Or you get too deep into it. You're like, I've invested a lot in this and it's too late. We're not turning back, unfortunately.
Well, and I think that is the good thing about completing a year and evaluating. Hey, what do you like about that year? How, and if they say, which we went through, if they say, I don't think I want to do it next year. Okay, well, think about that because your friends are going to do it. They're going to be there. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, what do you want to do instead?
Yeah, I'm thinking back now that we're saying this to conversations I had with my parents around the times I wanted to quit. And there was always some aspect of soccer that did give me joy, even if it was just, like you were saying, Megan, the friendships I had by going to practice. And I think when there's no joy in a sport or activity, it becomes pointless. Like I can think of so many girls I played with who were so talented, even some that were committed to D1 schools. And they would either play 1 year and quit, or they never even went to the school because they were pushed so hard.
They were tired.
They were exhausted. They were burnt out. And it makes me sad because I can think of so many memories I had playing soccer throughout the years. And, I don't know. I wonder how much of that was robbed just because.
At a certain age, like high school, they have to start owning that they want to do it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they will rebel. And then it just becomes a chore to them mentally to have to do because their parents are forcing them. So you want to have that conversation of, okay, well, if you didn't do that, what would you do? And what would that look like? What would you miss? And sometimes kids do step away for a year and do something different at a crucial year and come back to it because they realize then, gosh, I really did like that. It was better than this thing I tried over here.
Yeah.
I saw a meme recently that and it's kind of a bit of a Jesus juke, but it said something like the chance of your child playing a professional sport is 0.00 whatever.
It is.
The chance of your child someday standing in front of Jesus is 100%, like being judged, by God is 100%. And it was an argument about getting to church on Sunday versus playing the sport on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's maybe kind of a smart aleck way to go about it. But I admire on Sunday morning when I see that family who either has divided and conquered, like dad goes early with one kid, mom goes later with the other one, and they're in their uniforms and their soccer uniforms. I really admire that because I think that living by the ball field Sunday morning, we're on our way to church and there's dads and their sons walking in with their bags of bats and balls. I'm like, all right, well, maybe you went last night.
That was me and my friend Megan. We would go to church on Sundays in our uniforms. We would sit and we would leave like 10 or 15 minutes early, and her dad would take us to Miami, and like that's how it was for like a good 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's really a lot. There's a lot of pressure on kids and parents to do it all with probably no real potential of them going beyond high school. Yeah. But I think that's also why you need to make sure they're enjoying it in the moment, like because it's not going to be forever. So make sure it's something that's worthwhile for them. So are you feeling like extracurriculars are a little extra right now? Tell us about it. You can also find links to everything we chatted about today in the show, links to the iMom articles that we mentioned, and a link to subscribe to our iMom Minutes so you can get quick daily inspiration right in your inbox. If you enjoyed listening, make sure you rate us on iTunes so it helps other moms find us. And thanks for listening. The iMom podcast is hosted and produced by Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal. Edited by Isaiah Gunther.